Hi, everybody. Welcome. We are going to get started in just a minute as everyone's trickling in from the waiting room.
Wow.
All right, we are going to go ahead and get started, and we'll just keep letting people in as they join us. Thank you, everyone, so much for taking time out of your evening to join us on this amazing call tonight. My name is Erica Abrams, and I am the manager of the Advisor and Parent Experiences at BBYO. I am based in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I primarily work with our advisor and parent communities, making sure everyone is feeling good about their adult role here in BBYO. We put on these calls sponsored by our parent council once a month with lots of amazing guests and speakers with different connections to BBYO all across. So we are really excited that you're here tonight. So welcome to tonight's session, Raising Resilient Teens, Brain Science and Strategies for Connection. Tonight, we're going to be diving into the number one way to prevent toxic stress and mental, physical, and behavioral health problems, which is the greatest public health threats of our time, including things like lifelong violence, bullying, drug addiction, anxiety, depression, suicide, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and more. At least one SSNR need or safe, stable, nurturing relationship between an adult and a child. So we're really excited to dig into that tonight with our hosts, Ari Handel, BBYO Senior Director of Inclusion, Barbara Unell, and Dr. Stephen Lauer. Barbara's journey as an author, publisher, educator, and social entrepreneur began with her first book at the age of 8. A graduate of the University of Texas at Austin with degrees in journalism and psychology, she has co-authored 17 books with Dr. Jerry L. Wyckoff, including Discipline Without Shouting or Spanking and the 8 Seasons of Parenthood. Her work spans columns for the Kansas City Star, national radio, and features parenting projects like the Baby Buffer. Barbara co-founded the Kindness is Contagious Catch It campaign and Back in the Swing, launching the first breast cancer survivorship center. In 2024, her Raise with Love and Limits Foundation introduced Raising KC, a campaign promoting nurturing adult relationships to prevent toxic stress. And Dr. Lauer received his undergraduate degree from KU and his PhD in biochemistry from the University of Texas at Austin. After working for several years in a molecular biology laboratory studying atherosclerosis, please correct me, that is a word I'm not familiar with. He went back to medical school and graduated from the University of California, Irvine School of Medicine. Dr. Lauer helped to lead our first pilot site during the behavior checker. He said, "I believe this approach will allow for a better, brighter future for our children." According to Dr. Lauer, by teaching their parents and all who care for them how to effectively address the daily challenges of successfully raising children in today's world. We are so excited to have you all for this amazing conversation. Dr. Lauer, we're going to start it off with the question of how does stress become toxic?
Okay. Well, first off, thank you all for the invitation. We're delighted to be here because this is this is our favorite topic and something we've been working on for a long time and trying to get this information in front of people. So toxic stress is this idea that not that the world should be stress-free, that's also a bad thing for children and the rest of us, but the idea of toxic stress, that when children are exposed to an environment where they never get to calm down, never get to detoxify, that their brains develop differently. When we're in stressful situations, and the classic one is you're being chased by the bear. You're supposed to turn on a bunch of stress hormones, get the heck out of there. But then you're supposed to be able to calm down and have the situation return to normal you relax, you debrief on it. What did I learn from that? And that stress, although stressful, ends up being a positive thing for you. You've learned something. That is very different from the situation we're talking about of toxic stress, where a child, especially, is in that environment where their stress levels never decrease. So their brains are constantly exposed to the stress hormones, mainly cortisol and adrenaline. And we know from years of studies that a brain exposed to those normal stress hormones, but in a different time frame, develops very differently. Bottom line of it is that when we talk about
Neil.
brains developing, brains developing over time and not reaching full maturity until they're about 20 to 25, if we're lucky, then when that brain is exposed to those hormones, it never really has a chance to develop normally. And by that, we mean really bringing online those decision-making higher cortical functions, usually listed as, if you look at this literature, around the prefrontal cortex and executive functions, never come online or are delayed. Actually, if you look at the brains of kids who have been exposed in toxic stress situations, this is actually visible. The brains look different. They develop in different ways. They don't interconnect as well. And so these developmental pathways and executive functions, prefrontal cortex activities that we expect to come online as kids get to their teens and early 20s may never develop. And those are the things around executive function of, how do you react to new situations? How do you learn to self-regulate and deal with things that maybe aren't what you expect? How do you organize and take on new tasks? Those things don't come online and develop the way that they're supposed to. And that's the outcome of the toxic stress environment in the brain. In healthcare, that leads to long-term, lifelong negative results. Some of it related to biology, some of it related to the brain not making good choices about the environment you're in and how you're treating your body. But we know that overall, in the long run, as you're exposed to more and more toxic stress, it is one of the best predictors of your overall lifelong health. And for healthcare people, one of the best predictors of your costs to the healthcare system over the long term. So this toxic stress idea is core to what we're talking about. How do you interfere in that process, get away from toxic stress and get more to the positive versions of stress that allow people to develop more normally? So hopefully that's the very brief overview that Barb knows I could go on for a long time about how that really works, but that's really the idea that we're trying to combat here. And one of the what we see as the underlying cause of most, many at least, of the healthcare, educational, professional, and personal issues that we deal with in many different professions in this country. So I'll stop with that.
And Dr. Lauer, can you tell us a little bit, as parents of teens, what might that look like to us? How would we know if our teens are under that toxic stress?
So there's unfortunately no good test for it at the moment. You just can't, there's not a blood test, which we'd love to have, just walk up and say, you're under toxic stress right now. A lot of what this looks like, and is especially relevant, the exposure to it, especially in younger kids. So in that 0 to 3 to 4 year range is where a lot of that development gets behind. But then as they hit teenage years, again, the things that we would expect to normally develop, they get a little bit better at, maybe that wasn't a smart choice. Maybe they're able to deal with a negative situation or a change in situation a little bit more rationally as they get older and think things through. And so a lot of it can appear as impulsivity, getting mad at things, not being able to be talked through things, not being very good at, even in those debriefings after an experience, learning from it, thinking about how that what actually happened, and can I talk myself through it, and learning some of those self-regulation cues that are so important for everybody to learn. Just to be clear, a lot of that stuff happens in teenagers, no matter what their background environment was. It's just how we expect them to get better at it as they go along, and that can certainly be delayed in those kids who, even if they're not now in a toxic stress environment, were in their younger years. It can still delay that development and how they're behaving now. Barb, you're muted too now. So,
all right. Hello, I'm happy to chime in a bit, Steve, on this. Can you hear me now? Are we good? No?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, good. And I think that's such a great point in terms of the different kinds of stress, and that we, would that we all could prevent, what we always say. We just don't want our kids to be stressed out, right? I mean, we just say that no matter what age the child is. And so that, I think the one of the core pieces that Steve and I love to talk about is this very thing of all of you who are here tonight. Just even the fact that you are here is awesome, because it means that you want to understand your teenager better. You want to figure out what you can do, and some of the questions that we got from you, and then reflect on maybe even your own adolescence, that some of the behaviors that your kids are doing maybe either reminding you of, or perhaps saying, well, wait, that didn't happen to me, so what's wrong with I mean, there's all kinds of emotions going on, to say the least, on the adult side of this topic of toxic stress. And so I think, the wonderful example you gave, Steve, about to the question about what does that look like. Some of us, even as adults, may find ourselves having trouble regulating our emotions, or we get really upset or really angry or really, disappointed or frustrated. If we haven't had some safe, stable, nurturing relationships, that's what we were talking about, Erica, in the introduction here, because we're going to get to the good news. I promise you, we'll get to the good news. We've been talking about, all the pain and suffering, but the great news is that the main topic of our night is a safe, stable, nurturing relationship, because the flip side of toxic stress, or of the coin, is a safe, stable, nurturing person. I say adult, but person in a child's life, no matter what the age of the child is. And the data, the science has shown us this really, I consider it to be a miracle, really, that you don't have to go purchase something. It's insurance. It's not a drug. It's not anything. It's you and or a coach and or your fellow teachers or mentors or advisors and the other adults, all the adults. Really, what BBYO is as I see it, is an organization of safe, stable, nurturing folks who are there to help prevent, and that's the key word, upstream, prevent these things that Steve was talking about. Is that okay to call you Steve? I could call you Dr.
Yes,
Power, but
please.
So when we give talks about this topic, we often are asked, well, so how do you prevent? You can't make it not a stressful world. And so, back to I think the question of what does it look like in a teen? What does it look like in all of us, really? And then there's I'd like to use the bulk of our conversation tonight about what we can do, and the safe, stable, nurturing piece of that, and how do we know if a relationship that a teen has is safe, stable, and nurturing? So that might be something that, Ari, maybe you might want to pose a question about, or how we can relate that to some of the things that your audience wants to know so well.
I think it would be so helpful to hear kind of what what constitutes a safe, stable, nurturing relationship. I would imagine a lot of people on this call are that for their kids, and maybe are even that to some of their children's friends. So would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's some pretty simple. Again, the nice thing about this is it's all fairly straightforward, simple concepts. The one thing that we warn people beforehand it requires is time. And if there's anything that's hard to come by in today's world, it's that time. And that's where this really does require effort out of the adults in these kids' lives. Again, we think of this as hopefully in being parents, but it needs to be many more adults involved too in every child's life. The safe idea I think of as just the kid understanding from an adult by their actions and their presence, I'll protect you, that the world is a safe place, and if there's something that is a problem for you, I'm there to protect you. The stable is I'm here today, I'll be here tomorrow. You don't have to worry about me going away. I'm in this for the long run with you, and you can believe that and trust that. And then the nurturing is just that I care about you. I'm doing this because I'm interested in you. I'm interested in you doing well, and therefore I'm going to invest my time and my efforts into you because you're important. And so it's just, I'll protect you. I'm here for you. I care about you. How you relay those things to a child by your presence and your actions and words toward them relays to them that they are in that safe, stable, nurturing environment and can de-stress, let those hormone levels, all those stress effects calm down and start to engage in a relationship that isn't based on fear or what's bad's going to happen to me next. Is that, Barb, any other things
Right.
on the
No, I think
SSNRs?
it's so true. And in, you mentioned, I think, Erica, about the different books that I've written over the years and with Jerry Wyckoff and the work that Steve and I have done in terms of presentations and programs and things like that. The bottom line sort of piece of that we always do put in the work that we do is what does it look like? What does, even in the midst of all of our stressors, right? We're not going to always have a wonderful day or be in, I think of all the snow days that many of us have had, or all the stressors in this environment, this culture that we're living in. So there are things that are bothering us, and it doesn't mean we have to be, always quote unquote happy. But I think the critical piece is how we relate, and in the professional terms, it's called relational health, right? Is this relational health. And again, this is why I got so excited about giving this conversation tonight and shouting it from the rooftops if I could, because it actually literally changes the brain, changes on a physical level. It can even actually, this kind of relationship, this emotionally available, engaged, and attuned to the child, even if you don't really even understand what your teen is doing or what they're thinking or how they're behaving or why would you do this, or that whole notion of what would be not nurturing is, again, blaming or shaming or putting down or not being listened to. And I know as a mom myself that sometimes you're just not in the headspace to do that. And so what we've done and what we'll talk about for a few minutes here is something called mindset, and it's self-talk, empathy, and teach. And going to that, go to those 3 steps in terms of responses in terms of our teenagers' behavior and our living and building these safe, stable relationships. If we have sort of again, it's kind of like, I have to talk about coffee. So I happen to have a really great coffee machine. I'm really lucky. So you just go, that coffee machine is going to be that coffee machine, just push those buttons and there you go. Right. And so to have what we're going to be talking about, this SET, this mindset approach, can, we hope, as I said to Erica, I hope you all leave this evening's conversation like, oh, I can do that when I get really stressed myself. And it's hard for me to do those things that Steve was just talking about, to be uh, uh, kind of put together, if you will, to calm myself down, to help communicate with my teenager in a way that builds a trust and builds support. We're going to talk a little bit, I'm teasing this right now, about mindset and how that can help you. Is everybody on the edge of their seat? I can't really see everyone, but what do you think? Yeah, maybe, Harry? Are they?
They're desperate to find out. Yeah.
I hope so. I just have, please share us maybe some questions or thoughts about being clear on that kind of real. We want this evening to also be real, because it's not the easiest thing to do all the time for adults, but we want you to know that it actually is the #1 way to help prevent some of the, we saw some of the questions, some of the things that I know we're all worried about. And so building the SSNR, those safe, stable, nurturing relationships is so key. Thoughts, as they say?
So the one other thing that we want to get to in this, and this is probably, it's the difference is a little bit easier to see when we're applying this to the 3, 4, 5-year-olds. But one of the first things is, I think, is remember, is trying, the effect of this is to not have parents talking like teenagers with teenagers, but trying to elevate the game so that teaching your adolescents and teenagers how to start talking like and behaving like adults. And so that does take a while, because there's that initial push in everybody, no matter what your life has been lucky enough to be like, how you are. Our first responses in stress remain, for all of us, that God, it's like somebody's coming at me, somebody's doing something I don't like. That's a threat. And we're really wired to respond to threat environments by ramping up ourselves and getting into that stress cycle, and those stress hormones that turn on when something's seen as a threatening or environment. And so how do we get parents and any adult involved in children's lives to avoid that first response? And that's a lot of what we talk about with the set ideas. So maybe we could just walk through
Can you
those
sum up what you've said so
details of
far?
that. Aaron, is there a question? No, okay.
That's a really good point. And I think to that point, you know, the idea of what's going on in your brain. Again, we're talking to the adults here, what's going on in you. We talked a lot about the kids' brains, right?
Yes.
But there's really even some pretty startling statistics, I think, Steve, about preventing you know, the parenting style and how they affect adolescent development.
Correct.
You want to maybe
Right.
chat a bit about that?
Sure. So one of the things that's we look at from the scientific side, and one of the ways that we keep track of toxic stress, because people like to count things, is called adverse childhood events, or ACEs, and that's luckily becoming a much more common term in our society as people understand what either the combination of abuse, neglect, or family dysfunction are the 3 domains of ACEs that are used to count, in a ways, try and quantify toxic stress. So there's lots of ways of counting that, different surveys and scores, but they all get at the same thing, that as children are exposed to that environment and their ACEs score builds up, they have more and more relational problems, decision-making issues as they get older. One thing that came out recently was that about 42% of children in this country live in a family where one of the adults has 4 or more ACEs. Therefore, that parent, through the way that they have matured through life, are at a disadvantage in trying to control themselves and understanding how that's happened, and did not have the benefit of those SSNRs as they were growing up. So this is a generational, multi-generational issue. And so what we're trying to get at with for those families is trying to break into that cycle a little bit, get this set of tools available for everybody so that they can begin to have these more reasonable and productive interactions with their kids. So the first one is just self-talk. In the medical world, one of the things that we're always taught when you go to a code, when somebody is having to do chest compressions, the first thing you always do is take your own pulse. Everybody take a deep breath, calm down, because in that first response when your adolescent is doing something just unbelievably dumb, and sometimes seemingly intentionally, but like
just wait, I couldn't hear. What's unbelievably dumb?
No, just saying kids do a lot of things that are stressing their parents, and when they do that for their parents
Thanks for that.
react. And so the first thing to do for everybody is to take a breath, step back, have a little self-talk. And the first rule is, there's a reason my grandmother said count to 10, right, before you do something. And that's the same idea, is that can everybody get past that first surge of that stress response and not respond then. Just take a breath, back away, and do a little bit of that self-talk. Say, hey, what am I doing? Let me just think about how I'm responding.
Yeah, and I think to that point, it's such, it's so important to sort of define the fact that what are you saying to yourself is actually kind of startling sometimes, because you realize you're telling yourself, this is terrible. I can't stand this. This is, I back to the mindset piece, back to the idea of how to build a safe, stable, nurturing relationship, that evaluating yourself, like you said, and thinking about yourself, but also sometimes we're not even aware that we're telling ourselves how we feel about, or how we think. It's more important how we think about a situation. And I know, there are many therapists, or many folks who have espoused ways of getting at that, how to do cognitive behavior therapy, which is really what this is just changing the way you think about something. But in this case, in terms of the reaction piece, it is the first step in this mindset approach, because just exactly what you said, Steve, because then your cortisol levels, your kid's behavior doesn't become toxic to you. And so remember how I promised you're going to feel better tonight before, when you leave, than when you came. So we're here to say how you think of it, how you are aware of your own thoughts, can be really, really helpful. And if you find that you are negatively spiraling, that you just cannot stop awfulizing or thinking this is terrible, or I just don't think I can stand this, or whatever, then it's also a sign for you to get some help, for you to get some sort of support, whether it's from a safe, stable, nurturing relationship for you, or to consult with your physician or someone in your community in a mental health setting, because sometimes that's simply the root of really where your behavior starts to go south, is what you're telling yourself. But the second piece after you calmed yourself down would be to put yourselves, the E in mindset, to put yourself in your teenager's shoes, to use that wonderful word called empathy, that lets you look at that teenager's behavior. Let's just say, I don't know, the teenager, I don't know, missed a curfew, let's say, or didn't, track. I'm trying to think of something just very simple. Let's say leaves the dirty clothes in the living room. How's that? And you're frustrated, or you're upset, or you think you can't stand it one more time. Again, self-talk, calming yourself down. And then empathy is like, well, maybe he's really not trying to drive me crazy. Maybe just, has this bad habit that I call bad. But maybe we can do something I can do something to work with him to help change that. And that would be the T in self-talk. And that's in mindset, I'm sorry. And that is to teach. So what is the lesson here? And what is the larger lesson, let's say, about any of these behaviors our kids do? So thinking about what you really want to teach then puts this in a building up mode, your response, rather than a tearing down, puts you in a safe and stable and nurturing mode, rather than a tearing down and shaming and blaming mode. Is that
to the point too? The idea is that you're modeling this for your adolescents, and part of that is teaching them this. So for the adolescents, if there's ones on this call as well, this works all directions. You're perfectly capable too of doing the let's calm things down. Let's like, why are my parents acting like this? It's not that big a deal. And then try and get some understanding of what is it that you want to be able to talk to them about, teach them about. So it goes in all ways and all relationships here. It's a model that's remarkably effective across all age ranges and in all age directions.
right? Exactly. And when we talk about mindset or talk about the ways to build these relationships, the reason that I think it's so important that we have this conversation is that sometimes it sort of could be scary to say, this is the number one way to help prevent all of these pieces. And so, as we know, no one is trained, if you will, in parenting. I mean, we are trained by the way we were parented, or we are trained by taking courses or going to workshops or all of these things. But getting information and getting support and finding that piece that works for you and your own toolbox, the tools that you need, has never been, the science has never been more profound to say that this is actually at the core, at the base of all of these issues that we're talking about. And so when we sort of sometimes I think, Steve, when we talk about SED or we talk about mindset, and it sort of sounds like we might be trivializing some of these behaviors or some of these ways of thinking, but they actually literally can change the DNA of our kids. And so we're happy, and when we come to some questions and answers, to kind of look at what specifically, how people want to apply some of this to some of the struggles that they're having in their own lives, because it's my favorite part of a presentation, because then you can really get at what people, how to help them see how to do something that not only helps them, but helps their whole family dynamic.
And last one, I'll just say, to be clear, this, we can talk about this and you can summarize it in very short number of words. This is not, it's simple, but it is not easy. And it requires that constant work and going into the environment all the time of going out with this approach, because those safe, stable, nurturing relationships are challenging to build and they're easily ruptured. And so it's simple, but it's difficult because it's an all the time kind of thing. And in today's world, with time pressures and all the pressures that everybody has to get things done and be rushing around, it's challenging to keep these concepts in the front of your mind all the time. But that's, in the end, what we think is really important for the adolescents, for your children in general, to relay to them that this is how you can be an effective parent, and that's how they're going to learn to do it too. It is also not fast. There's the other problem. It is not fast. This is many of the questions that we saw before, and how do I do this? And it's like, well, I mean, this is not going to be, well, we had a talk and we're all going to do this and now everything is wonderful. That is not how the way it works. This is the very long-term approach over many years, as you're helping your children mature and develop into the responsible adults and parents that you all want them to be. So.
Any comments or questions?
Well, I think before we get to the questions, can you kind of walk through a scenario and just kind of like, can we do a practice round before we get to some of those questions and show us kind of the model of what it should look like?
Sure.
Sure.
Well, Barb, why don't you take that, because it gives us a chance to talk about the specific tool, which we have out there that has kind of incorporated many of these ideas into some specifics.
Absolutely. Yes, and I'll give a little background to that too. This is how critically exciting this is to me and important. When Steve and I started working together on helping pediatric practices in Kansas City and beyond in getting the pediatric practice to have tools so that they could help their families. It became really clear that that in terms of the American Academy of Pediatrics and other organizations that train pediatricians, medical schools, et cetera, it became almost just kind of, I don't know what the word is, kind of an aha moment, I guess you might call it, when Steve, we started talking about, well, nurses and doctors and physicians, even many social workers, speaking to a social worker, and are not trained in trained or have this kind of professional education in parenting. You want to speak a bit to that, Steve? Because I want to
Sure.
couch mindset, because that's really where mindset came from.
Right. So a lot of our background this came about as we were looking for tools, really came from talking with our nurses who are taking all these phone calls from parents. And while there were plenty of calls about he has a fever, he's thrown up or whatever, there were many calls about my child got thrown out of daycare because they were biting, and my middle school kid I can't get him to go to bed at night. My teenager won't turn in their homework, things like that. And when we looked at it, we realized none of us had any training in. When I came out of pediatric residency, I could intubate somebody. I really wasn't too sure what to do with a lot of these questions. And it's really become, as our children are more and more physically healthy, which is a great thing, that the highlights or the spotlights really shifted to these behavioral and mental health issues and how we're supposed to address those. So trying to get to correct some of that and find ways to get some basic tools that we could use in the context of an office visit, usually pretty brief, to get into parents' hands and to help our nurses as they were answering these triage calls was where this started. And then like, well, how do we do that? How do we get this information? You can Google it and get a wide variety of information that says how to approach it, but how do we get a consistent answer across the board is where what led us into this next step.
Exactly, and I think the other piece for us, back to mindset, was to sort of look at these issues around overcoming challenges, building resilience, delaying gratification, all of those pieces that build a healthy, just a human experience, if you will, and then looking at 3 different kinds of therapeutic approaches that Dr. Wyckoff and I have done have done in our books over the years. So we wrote the book Discipline with Love and Limits that was published several years ago, and then as we started working with pediatric practices and the American Academy of Pediatrics, particularly, there was no tool, an online tool that helped look at that approach for the adult. There's a lot of stuff. Well, this is what you do with your child, right? This is how you deal with your child, like help him get to bed, or help him do this, or help him, like we said, meet his curfew, or how to treat his friends, or what if a friend is not there for the child, and all of those things. So we developed this online tool called Behavior Checker, and I'm thrilled to say that we're going to be working with BBYO to help bring Behavior Checker, hopefully, to all of you, as well as the teams that work with BBYO. It's an online tool that has answers and solutions and responses using mindset, as well as some other approaches for teaching for over 150 behaviors. Now, sort of digest that for a moment. 150 normal, everyday, common behaviors, right? So at first blush, what Steve and I really want to help folks know is that, yeah, these are 150 normal, everyday behaviors, right? So the concept that you all are here to learn about how to build these safe, stable relationships is not like a one-off, right? I mean, this is core to the human experience, and so we're so excited to be bringing Behavior Checker to hospitals and pediatric practices and community mental health centers and to across the country, but most importantly, to have this resource so that you, the user, can understand, as you said, the model, of Ari, of how to put this into practice, and you can see over all these behaviors in whether it's Discipline with Love and Limits, the book, or whether it's Behavior Checker online, you can see how that approach can be applied to all these different behaviors. And so I'm going to ask you, Ari, that you pick a situation. Give us what does it sound like, a TV show or something, right? Give us a scenario, and this has not been rehearsed, right, Steve?
Right.
We have not. This is secret. This is on real live TV, right?
Well, I think the curfew one is great. So teens coming home late, you had set some boundaries and you've been waiting up for them and they come in late.
Okay. All right. So can you play with me? Can you and Steve, Ari, can you be our
Yeah. Am I your teen?
you're the parent.
Uh-oh, okay. All right. The challenging part.
Erica's going to be the teen.
Oh gosh.
You ready,
Okay.
Erica?
I'm ready.
Okay, so you come in late.
Oh, I'm so sorry I'm late.
Mom.
I'm gonna check myself silently. Take that deep breath. Okay, we had talked about that I expected you home at midnight and it's 12:45. So, we had talked about this and I expected that you were going to respect the boundaries we've discussed.
I know, but the movie got out late and then we wanted to get
Wait. Before you respond, okay, let's look at that self-talk. Okay, what was your self-talk before you opened your mouth even?
My self-talk was my child's home and safe. They didn't follow this boundary that I had set, and so I'm feeling frustrated and want to communicate to them that they didn't respect the boundary.
Okay.
Cool.
And what's the teachable moment here?
The teachable moment is that I set boundaries for a reason, and they need to be respecting those boundaries. So we haven't gotten there yet.
So yeah, right, exactly. So what do you think, Erica, the teen? So maybe Erica, the teen, didn't learn that yet? Right?
I think maybe their lack of brain development got them.
But you don't know. You don't know, right?
Right.
You don't know what went on. You don't know what happened. All you know is that, oh, I've got some more work to do as a mom.
Yeah.
I'm calm. Now I got a little more work to do because obviously Erica, the teen, didn't really learn this, but I'm calm now. I'm not yelling. I'm not shaming or blaming or throwing, God forbid, Erica under the bus, literally or figuratively. You're just, okay, so you're going to use it. You're going to say, so you use empathy. Maybe you want to know what happened.
Sure. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what happened.
There you go. So right there. Is that a safe, stable, nurturing comment? Yeah. Well, how does that feel, Erica, for your mom to ask you what happened? How does it feel to you?
Feel angry yet? Like she's curious to know.
Do you feel
what
good?
happened there? Yeah.
She cares, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
So even in this moment of fury, if you will, look how much you've accomplished. Like you're calmed down. You realize, oh, I got some more work to do, and you're helping Erica not, you know, feel
And
like
even,
got to be
and
defensive.
in terms of the safe part, even that you thought the comment, but I'm glad you're home. I'm glad you're safe. That is the most important thing of the evening.
Mhm.
And
Right.
keeping that SSNR environment built. You thought it, let them know that is the kind of thing we're trying to get at. So
Exactly. Yes. Right. Exactly. That's a great point, because it's good you thought it, but even better that you've said it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Erica, now what do you say to this loving, safe, stable
loving,
mom?
wonderful setup.
I said that we lost track of time and we went to get a snack and my phone was dead and excuse after excuse.
Okay.
Well,
Okay, empathetic
but
mom.
they're also real things. That is
Yeah.
what happened, right?
Either real or made up. We don't know.
Either way, but benefit of the doubt, they're all
Benefit of the
plausible,
doubt,
right?
because that goes back to empathy.
Right.
So you're going to use empathy. You're not going to all of a sudden go, you're lying to me. You, right?
No,
Because then that again would not build this safe, stable business.
sure.
So, all right. So empathy is like, have you ever been late before, mom?
Maybe. Yes, probably. Not me, but I know other moms are.
There you go.
Okay. So what would you say is an empathetic response to that, to those, that,
I know things can happen. I know things can come up. In our home, we value communication. So, I was concerned when I hadn't heard from you. You're
No.
typically responsible and let me know when you're running late.
okay, wait, now you're getting into the teaching part, right? So before you get into the teaching part, you go, I've been late too. And I know you were it probably was stressful because you knew I'm thinking, and Erica, how does that make you feel? Like your mom understands you?
It makes me feel very safe. Like can relieve, like take a deep breath now that I'm home and I know that I'm not immediately in trouble.
Good. Okay, so what's the goal? I mean, what's the positive goal, the teaching goal?
I want, if it is to happen again, I want her to communicate with me.
Good. Okay, so now back to teaching, and in behavior checker and in discipline with love limits and all of this we go through this teaching system. So first you got to go into, okay, so you know what you want to teach now, right?
Yep.
Again, teach versus punish. Teach versus punish. So you're teaching at this juncture. Okay, so what you would say is that you would figure out, okay, so what can happen to help Erica learn to be on time? I mean, what would you like to have happen? And this you can do, as Steve said, you could do together, because you've
Sure.
got, both of the, and the third piece. So you state what you want as the goal, what you want child to learn, or teen, whoever, to learn, and then how to do it, which would be, could you just text or call, or let's figure out a system, and then you got to make the behavior worthwhile. What would really motivate Erica to do that? Your daughter.
I would hope as a teen that some empathy for her parents, knowing that we have boundaries and respect, empathy and respect, that my parents were worrying about me and that they set some realistic boundaries with me.
And it's important to you, right?
Right.
And why is it important to you?
Because I want to know that she's safe, and yeah.
So all of that. So tell Erica that.
Okay, so it's important to me that I know when you'll be home, because I want to know that you're safe, and I trust that you're making safe choices, but I want you home at a reasonable hour. So what can we do to work on this for next time so that I can know that you'll be home within the time limits that we set together?
You are a good teacher. That's
Yeah.
good. You're a very quick learner. All right, Erica, how does that make you feel?
Feels great. It feels like I'm allowed to go out again next time and I'm not, stuck inside, and that I know what she's expecting of me even clearer than maybe what I did before I went out.
And could you come up with an idea of what you could do, or together? And maybe we'll run out of time here, so we can brainstorm offline. You guys, oh wait, this is not the team. Sorry, we're just but you get the idea, right? Come up with a plan or whatever it is. But everyone is back to what Steve was talking about in terms of feeling safe, feeling trusted, and also working together to solve what the goal is, which is to learn to respect the curfew for many reasons, and we don't have to talk about all of those. Okay, so how do you feel now? Yay! Okay, I hope that was a good enough example of how to
Yes,
how
that was really helpful.
it's
Thank
not
you.
hard, but it's a shift.
Yes, definitely.
All right.
Great. Well, I think it would be great if we could move into some questions that have come in.
Sure.
Okay, so one of the first questions that came in is, can you give us an example of extended stress? So kind of going back to the
So-
beginning when we talked about that extended stress.
Sure. So, and especially in the younger ages, and some of this is knowing a little bit of child development, but one is just that sense that the world is safe. And so those 1, 2, and 3-year-olds, they're just looking for is there somebody around to help me and that I know I can count on. So a lot of things in the world today make that very challenging for parents to be able to do, right? They've got it. Many are people working 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And that sense of physical time with our children is really hard to meet, but that's the parameter that those kids are counting. And so even though they're in a safe environment, physically safe, that lack of contact, of just that sense that somebody is there to care for me, can be is one of the falls unfortunately under the set of like dysfunction. So doesn't saying that stress has to be these obvious, somebody's hitting me or something physically bad is happening around me. It's also this building these foundations of trust and safety in kids, so that sense of extended periods of time that there's just not anybody here to care for me, even though we put them in good environments, can really be that kind of quiet toxic stress too that can be around and build up in kids.
And really back to the flip side of, I mean, it may sound so foreign, but when you think about it, the extended stress, whether it's school or feeling like, you have to be perfect, or it's coming from, friendships or social relationships, which are of course the core of a lot of teenagers' worlds. And it can be physical as well, that you feel this tightness in your the teen does extended period of time. So that you can feel this tightness, there's this nervousness, maybe you can not feel like you ever can relax, and that safe, stable person, whoever that relationship is, and it can be a variety of people, more than one, the more the better. The teenagers, again, the competition and the social pressures can create ongoing stress, but it becomes toxic in the absence of these safe, stable relationships, because then that body doesn't, a body doesn't have, a mind doesn't have any chance to calm down. So whether extended period of stress is buffered or mitigated by this relationship, whether it's mitigated by therapy, whether it's mitigated by, playing sports or some sort of outlet in which it's on other kinds of brain chemicals are stimulated. There are lots of ways to do that, but as we're talked about tonight, the number one way, through the data that has been shown throughout studies over the past 30, 40 years, is through the human relationships. And so you'll say, well, my child's in swimming, and then he, goes right to basketball, and then he's got, chess club, and he's busy. I mean, why is he so stressed? I don't understand, and then you're like, back to self-talk, empathy, and teaching, right? What is your child teaching you? If there's extended stress in that, maybe there's something that the child is teaching you as well. It's, as Steve said before, it's a two-way street.
I think that lends itself really nicely to one of the questions that came in that I think is interesting. I think it basically said that, this model is so wonderful maybe for this first offense, but if Erica was late again for the eighth week in a row and isn't really isn't respecting the boundaries, what do we do then? And how do we handle it then?
Well, then I'm no psychologist, but there has to be, at some point, there are senses of, responsibilities and buffers and responding to those boundaries. And again, this is not something that anybody can pick up and expect to be in place. We didn't do anything about this, for the first 10 years or 12 years of their lives, but now we're going to hold them to it. That's going to take longer, but people do consistently respond to consistent same behaviors from everybody. They can't be playing, you can't get one answer from somebody and another from somebody else. But eventually, I agree. There has to be some type of discussion. Part of the thing of that discussion you had there is, okay, if this is the 18th time, well, next time this happens, here's what is going to have to happen, and just have it be a measured response when things happen. We talked about it, this is what happens. Because eventually, there has to be that respect and responsiveness to the parents. The way things are in the house has to be, they have to come around to that, but it takes a while. And that's part of their normal development, is pushing on that as well. But also is understanding that here's what we have to have happen around here. Here's the reasons why. And you can't come in at 2 o'clock on a school night. That's, because you won't be able to do well in school, whatever the setting is. So eventually those are there, and there can be some consequences to behaviors. But there's a difference, we think, between consequences and punishments and how that comes across, which is easy. We realize this is all easy to say, very hard to do.
Right. And I think it's also really critical in terms of that concept of this relationship building, because that's really what tonight's conversation is about, is building this relationship. And so, absent the context of this question, which is an excellent question, is the overarching kind of relationship that is already there in terms of testing boundaries or being defiant, or or throwing tantrums, or whatever the behavior of the student, listen to me, the teen is, but also what has been the response from the adult or the parent or the grandparent or coach or whoever it is that's talking about this curfew. So that's why one of the pieces around the conversation is to have a ongoing conversation, or answer it in a longer way, to say, all right, let's look at some scenarios of what that relationship looks like, because it's built over time, as Steve said, but also it's built over habits. If that teen knows, it doesn't matter. I never have to do anything. My mom or dad or whoever says, they'll never do anything about it. It doesn't even matter. That's one thing. Or if this is the first, sort of example of this, freedom situation, right? Or breaking out of, tell me what to do, or, I could go, it's 8 o'clock. It's a long conversation, but it's important to look at the context, which is why, as Steve said several times, and he's so right, this happens over time, but checking your own kind of responses. And I've been a parent for a long time. I'm still checking my responses, and sometimes not so happy about some of the responses, because we're all human, So looking at what that in the curfew situation, I wouldn't let that go 18 times or whatever I think the example was. Because again, that clearly is showing someone's not learning anything, and maybe there needs to be a different teaching system going. And I mean that literally,
The last one I just want to make, I know we're getting close to time, is we've talked a lot about doing this in responses to negative behaviors, things we want them to learn not to do. Very important. Everything shows that everybody responds better to positives. So right. Not just taking the time to calm yourself down when there's something negative happening, but taking the time to remind yourselves, all of ourselves, to comment on and acknowledge and just positively say about positive behaviors, little things. I mean, that's how people learn what they should be doing, is both the positives, hopefully fewer the negatives as we go along, but taking time and generating time to make those positive comments to them as well.
Right. In absence of any, you don't have to even have any behavior, right?
No, no behavior.
Safe, stable, anything, whether it's hello and good night, I mean, just how that's a great point. How that relationship is built. But I always say it's, it's easier when everybody's getting along and we're all, having a good old time, and where the rubber meets the road is when the road is a little rough. So yes, but that's a great point, and feels good too, right? In fact, we've talked about adverse childhood experiences. There's something called PACEs, which is positive experiences, childhood experiences, and the data is profound around providing. And again, not trips to Disneyland. You mentioned it, Erica, Disney World. No. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about a little touch on the shoulder, or a little eye, serve and return eye contact, or whatever it is. It's now we all feel better, right? As we conclude this, I like that we're ending on a positive note, Steve. Good work. I like that.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you both so much. Barb, Steve, Ari, thank you all so much for taking the time tonight to share with us, talk about really important ways for us to reflect on our own relationships with our children, our children's friends. If you're an advisor, the teens we work with, any way we interact with those who are really needing and benefiting from a safe, nurturing, stable, nurturing relationship. I knew there was another one in there. Thank you all so much. Just save the date for a couple of our next upcoming parent events. Next month, we will be live streaming from Denver at our international convention. The conversation will be around navigating tough conversations with youth with speaker Dr. Logan Lefkoff, who is a speaker, author, and activist. So that information will be coming out to you shortly. As well, I wanted to plug our upcoming March program, Scrolling for Self-Worth, Social Media, Eating Disorders, and Jewish Values in Teen Life with Dr. Melissa Span. So we've got some really unique and amazing programs coming up on the horizon. Thank you all again for your questions and conversations. It was a really lovely moment, and have a wonderful night. Thank you.
Thank you.